Hello, and welcome to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast on today, Monday, April 21st. Like always, I'm your host, Jake Daly. We got a good show for you today. Going to talk a little bit about Nico Iamaleava officially committing to UCLA, the fallout about that. Also going to talk a little bit about college football playoff. Leaders are meeting this week to discuss automatic bids, for the most part, a couple other things, but that's really the big talking point for this week. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Also going to preview a couple of Big 12 teams in the Cincinnati Bearcats and the Utah Utes today, break down their rosters, positions of strength, weakness, how they're looking for the upcoming season, and make sure you stick around for my last segment today when I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the options that could potentially replace Nico at Tennessee. But before we get into all that, I just want to remind everyone that this show is all about you. Whether you have a quick comment, a question, just any kind of hot take, anything you need to get out, we would love to hear it. An easy way to do that, make sure you get noticed, is to use the super chat feature. Just go ahead to the bottom of the chat box, click the $sign to send in your super chat there. This ensures that your comment or question gets on the air, gets live. Also, it's just a great way to support our channel here at GSMC. We cannot do what we do without your support, and we are so grateful to have you as a part of our community here at GSMC, just so we can keep bringing you more of the sport content, more of the sports updates that you love. So, Nico Iamaleava officially has announced his commitment to UCLA. I honestly kind of saw this move coming as soon as he entered the portal, but it's one that makes a lot of sense for him, I think for UCLA as well. This is a move that automatically improves their quarterback room, gives them a upper tier starter. I don't know. I wouldn't classify Nico as an elite starter, but definitely an upper tier starter to try to compete in the Big Ten. One of the things that I'm really looking at here is how UCLA is actually affording to pay Nico. So UCLA, this has kind of been a story with them for a while, that they basically said they don't really have a lot of money for NIL deals, stuff like that, of that nature, kind of in the athletic collective world, athletic departments. UCLA has kind of claimed that they don't really have a strong budget right now. They don't have a really deep, well-established collective that kind of can offer these NIL deals for these athletes. So that's one big component here. Also, just the new NIL legislation that's about to be in place. This gives players more leverage, more negotiation tactics. But in this particular situation, I think UCLA actually did have the advantage. There weren't a ton of landing spots for Nico that made a lot of sense, especially considering the timing of everything. When you think of the spring portal, most teams, pretty much every team, already has an established starting quarterback, or they have two or three guys that are competing for that role that they think could fill it out in the future. This is not a time to get a starting quarterback, and it really limited Nico's options, especially because he couldn't transfer within the SEC. That's one of the SEC's main rules, is during the spring portal, athletes cannot transfer in the conference. So they can't go from a Tennessee to an Ole Miss or to an LSU. That's just something that the SEC doesn't like. It's one of their conference rules. So right away, that knocks out 15 teams. Then you go down the list of teams that have established starters, teams that have paid guys, teams that have brought transfers in. That list really, really shrank for potential landing spots for Nico Iamaleava. So the leverage here was really with UCLA. They did have kind of an opening spot. Joey Aguilar, they brought in from Appalachian State, who I'm actually going to talk a little bit about later because he has now officially re-entered the portal. So that was honestly probably their biggest transfer addition to up to this point, was bringing in a different quarterback. But there weren't a lot of really great landing spots for Nico. Obviously, not a ton of the Big Ten teams, besides UCLA, really needed an established starter. One of the teams that they kind of mentioned was Oregon. That never really made a lot of sense to me. But I'm really curious here about how they're going to pay him. So, according to The Athletic, too, the UCLA athletic department has spent $200 million more than it has brought in over the past 5 fiscal years. So, they're operating at a loss right now in the athletic department, and that how are they going to be operating at a loss while also bringing in a really high-profile quarterback transfer? Their football ticket sales were 15th out of 16 public universities in the Big Ten last season, and their previous media rights deal with the Pac-12, it was about 2/3 less of what the Big Ten got this season. So they're kind of operating at a financial deficit. How did they find the money here? I wonder if it was just a collective, if there's a big donor from the school that tossed that money towards Nico. This is also kind of an interesting on-the-field fit for UCLA. Last year, UCLA offense was a disaster. They were 95th out of 134 FBS teams in terms of yards per play. They were 126th, so one of the bottom 10 offenses in the country in terms of scoring. Only scored 18.4 points per game. Rushing attack also was really weak for the Bruins this season. They only averaged 3.1 yards per rush, were the 128th rushing offense in the country. And then they also gave up 34 sacks. So across the board, offensive line wasn't strong. Running game wasn't great. Total offense was not where they wanted it to be. And then also most of the guys that kind of stood out from that skill group positions, they're gone now too. J. Michael Sturtevant, he's leaving. Logan Loya is also leaving. TJ Harden also leaving. So these guys are all out of the program, and those are some of the bright spots of the UCLA offense last season. It was bad enough. Eric Bieniemy, who, offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, Commanders, really well-respected name. He only got a year at UCLA. He's out as the offensive coordinator now. O-line coach Juan Castillo also was in his first year last season. He's out too. So you have two coaches that are out after year one of running that offense. This is going to be a really interesting unit to watch, to look at. I kind of think they're still going to struggle, but they're trying to remake their offense through the portal right now. So they added Mikey Williams, they added Jaden Wilson, two receivers that are kind of supposed to be at that forefront of the UCLA passing attack. But those two guys, between the two, they only have 79 career catches between those two wide receivers, which that's like a good season for a really great wideout. Only 79 career catches, so they haven't really proven themselves. Even though they're expected to be two of the main guys, this is going to be up for debate, up for question. We're not really sure. They also brought in a running back transfer, Anthony Woods. He was from Idaho. He was a productive player there. Between 2022 and 2023, rushed for over 2,000 rushing yards in total, had 19 touchdowns. He did transfer to Utah last year, actually. Didn't really play a lot, though. Had kind of an injury-plagued season. Didn't get a single carry for Utah last year. So that's going to be another guy coming into UCLA, but is he going to be more of the 2022-2023 version of himself, or more of the 2024 Utah version who didn't get a carry? I think that's going to be interesting to look at. Also, they brought in 4 offensive line transfers this offseason. So clearly need to remake the offensive line after being 107th in the country in terms of sacks allowed. That's obviously a unit that needs to be remade. And so I'm kind of curious how that's going to work out when you have a group that you bring in 4 transfers. Will that work out? Obviously, offensive line is a position group that needs chemistry, requires a ton of it. So how are you going to kind of rework that room with all those new faces in? People try this all the time. Programs try it all the time. Some succeed. A lot fail, though. So how is that remaking of the offensive line? Will it help? And again here, Nico, his main reasoning, allegedly, and everything that his kind of family has said is that he wanted to get out of Tennessee because of the offensive situation there, because of the skill group, because of questions on the offensive line. He wanted to get away from all of that. So it's kind of curious, though, that, that's your reasoning for leaving Tennessee, but the place that Nico actually ends up at has more offensive line questions, has less skill talent, just across the board at wide receiver, tight end, running back, across the board, less skill position talent, not as much experience on the O-line, even more turnover on the O-line. How does that kind of correlate? In my head, it doesn't really, but maybe there is something that he saw in Heupel's offense that they didn't like. I think this is probably more of a financially driven transfer, but my thing there too is, do we really think that Nico Iamaleava is going to make more money at UCLA than at Tennessee? He was scheduled to make over $2 million, about $2.25 up to $2.4 reportedly. Is UCLA gonna actually give him that money? I have serious questions about that. I have serious doubts about that. I don't think they have the capability to pay him that much. So if it's financially driven too, there's questions there. This is really just an interesting situation overall. We've never seen anything like it on the college level. But both of his kind of reasonings for transferring, allegedly, there's holes in those arguments, I would say. Definitely from an on-field perspective, UCLA is a weaker program than Tennessee is. There's no debate, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Tennessee, this has been an offense for the past 3 to 4 years that has been one of the top offenses in the country, and UCLA has not. They have not. So I think that's going to be really interesting to look at here. What actually happens? What does this offense actually look like at UCLA? What does this team look like at UCLA? Had a really rough year last year. And the other thing is, did Nico actually improve his situation at all? I kind of argue that he did not improve his situation. The one way I could see that this is actually an improvement overall is potentially just looking at draft stock. Do NFL scouts look more at Nico when he goes to UCLA because of less talent across the board, less talent around him, a different offensive scheme? If he produces, could that be, helpful for his draft stock? I think that's another kind of question mark in this whole transfer decision for Nico Iamaleava. But we're going to see how it goes. We're going to see how it looks. I don't know if UCLA is going to be back up there, but they definitely got a lot more interesting for this upcoming season. So now we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about automatic bids, the college football playoff, just what's going to happen with that. So we will be back shortly on the GSMC College Football Podcast.